Hello guys, in this week's episode I will be sharing with you the specs that you'll need for the smoothest editing rig. So you're looking to buy yourself a new computer or laptop or Mac. If you're looking at building one, you probably won't need this video, but if you're like me and you'd rather, buy your own machine, these are the type of specs that I will be looking at. Now if you're not over technical, do not worry, just get a pad or do like a file note on your phone and just jot down these sort of specs that I will be sharing with you in this video. Now the first thing you want to look at in your laptop or desktop is the chip. It's the most important part, to see it as the brain, and basically you want to get either an AMD or an Intel. AMDs do tend to be a bit cheaper, but with a new range of AMDs they do tend to be almost as good as Intel now, where before it was seen as the cheaper brand. But my streaming computer has AMD and it is really good. Now the specs I would look at personally is you want to get a chip that has at least 3 gigahertz, and it usually looks like GH with a little Z next to it. If you just get 3.0 or higher, and bear in mind it won't just have one chip, it will have at least 4 if not more cores now, which basically just means more chips, and that's what you want to look at. So if you're looking at Intel, you're more familiar with that, you might want to get something like an i5 or an i7, or you might want to get the, I think it's called the Ryzen. If you get a new one, it will be that. So as long as it's 3 gigahertz, that really is the most important thing. But I just want you to bear in mind is laptops are generally better for being more removable. Obviously you can carry it around with you wherever you are, wherever you want to edit and stuff like that. But just bear in mind that you do get much more for your money typically with a desktop. Now the next thing you want to look at when you're buying your dream rig, your editing rig, streaming rig, gaming rig, whatever you want to call it, is basically the graphic card or video card. This is highly important because this is the part of the computer that will process the video, or if you're gaming on it as well, and this is highly important. Now again, I'll be very truthful, it probably doesn't matter too much if it's a Radeon or GeForce, though they are better at different things, but the core thing you want to look at is basically, does it have at least 2 gigabytes, if not 4 gigabytes at DDR3. Just write that down again and bear that in mind. Now you can get much more expensive ones, and obviously if you're paying like over $1,000 for it, it'll most likely be DDR5 or DDR6 now anyway. But just look at the core, is it about 4 gigabytes or no lower than 2 gigabyte graphic card? That's the key spot to really bear in mind. Now obviously if your graphic card has more than that, if it has 4 or 6 or even 8 or more, then obviously it will be a dream computer. And just bear in mind that you may have to spend a little bit more on your graphic card if you're looking to edit 4K. Otherwise your computer or laptop may struggle. A lot of you probably understand what RAM is. That's just a part of the computer that uses almost like a working space. This is the easiest way to describe it. And personally, you want at least a gigs of RAM, if not 16 or even 32 if you really want to go extreme, or I know some of you out there probably have even more than that. But personally, as long as you've got about 8 gig, that should be fine for most editing laptops or desktops. And bear in mind, it will be about DDR3, and in newer machines it may also be DDR4, but don't worry, as long as it is with the specs of the computer, as long as you've got at least 8 or 16 gig, you should be fine. Now the other things you want to bear in mind is, hard drives. Do you want a static drive? Do you want an old-fashioned drive? Don't worry too much. Just make sure it has at least 1 gigabyte if you're recording video. Because obviously video takes up a lot of space, that in gaming, so just bear that in mind as a content creator. And something, just a little tip I want to share with you actually, is what I tend to do personally is I have an external hard drive, a static external hard drive that I can unplug and plug on any computer that I'm working on, and I can use it as like my workflow when I'm moving around, or if I'm in the studio or on my main desk, I can just move it around depending on what I'm doing, and I just find it really good. And for whatever reason, God forbid, if your computer dies or breaks down or starts playing up, you can go, oh well, I've got all my video on my external hard drive. And just adding to that tip, I personally only have an external hard drive that's no bigger than a gigabyte, sometimes even 500 GB, just because once it gets about 80% full, I tend to just get another one because I don't like to delete my video. And obviously you can do that to save money, and the reason I do that is you could say, well, what happens if the drive goes? Well, with a lot of my workflow, it tends to be make the video, post it on YouTube, and most of it I probably could delete if I wanted to, but I do like to use certain shots for B-roll later on, as you may have seen. And I just find if you do this, and if a drive does go and you've got 3 or 4 drives, you haven't lost all your work because it's spread over multiple devices. Now you could say you could back it up, and that's fine, but that's more hard drives and more bother. And I would, I personally don't do as much as I should, but I would definitely recommend, if you have the capacity and the hard drives to do it, or a spare computer, feel free to back up your video if it makes you feel safer, because it probably is a good idea. I'm going to tell you a little secret now. You're probably thinking, okay Dave, what do you edit on? Now I prefer desktops just because, as I said earlier, they do give you more for your money, and I use a Dell XPS. It doesn't really matter what the model number is, it's only about 4 or 5 years old, and the specs of it are 16 gig of RAM. It has a 4 DDR3 GeForce graphic card. I believe it's the 475 GTX. I think that's right. No, 745 GTX. I'll get there eventually. It doesn't really matter. It's a 4 gigabyte graphic card, and it's done me well. And I have about 2 gigabytes of hard drive space, which I barely use because, as I said earlier, I tend to do all my workflow on my external drive. So if I ever need to move pictures around, or if I decide for whatever reason to edit on a different computer, I can just unplug it, plug it on another computer or laptop, and off I go. So that's what I use, and it's a brilliant computer. And the reason why I use Dell, so if Dell ever watches this, is because I tend to find, and I've done a bit of research on this, is when you get a Dell, they tend to have, because you have lots of ranges of i7s and i5s and i3s, and for whatever reason Dells just tend to have a more power. It costs more, but they do tend to have a more powerful version, or like the most powerful version of that particular chip. So it just gives you a bit more horsepower when you're editing or gaming. So that's something just to bear in mind. So if this is your first time here, I'm Dave from TVR Creators, and I make weekly YouTube tips and video tips on building your brand. If that sounds interesting to you, subscribe now. And I hope you enjoyed today's video and got some value from it. Feel free to ask any questions you want in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them, and hit on the end cards to watch more of our content. We've got hundreds of videos now. So have a great day, great weekend, great whatever time of the day it is. And as always guys, you guys rock.